Welcome to Love and Trauma, the real deal. I'm Danielle Sebastian, best-selling author, coach, and yes, I've been through the marriage trenches myself. This show is all about how to actually deal with trauma in relationships and make it work without losing your mind. If you're ready for honest talk, no fluff, and tools that cut through the noise, tune in because let's face it, love can be a bit of a mess, but it's a mess worth figuring out. This is Love and Trauma, the real deal.
What if the thing that you've been using to cope is actually the thing that's keeping you stuck? I had the absolute honor of sitting down with Marcy Hopkins this last week. She's an award-winning TV host, podcast creator, author, and a recovery advocate who knows exactly what it's like to carry the weight of childhood trauma. She grew up in an environment filled with pain, and like so many survivors, she found a way to numb it. Alcohol became her escape, her shield, and her comfort. But that escape turned into a cycle, one that nearly took everything from her. The pain she buried kept resurfacing, affecting her relationships, her confidence, and the way she saw herself, until one night, everything changed. A rock bottom moment and her wake up call forced her to make a choice. She needed to either continue down a destructive path or fight for herself, her marriage, and her children. So Marcy is the creator and host of Wake Up with Marcy, where she brings powerful stories of resilience, transformation, and healing to the forefront. She also has an amazing book, Chaos to Clarity, Seeing the Signs of Breaking the Cycles, where she shares the raw truth about breaking generational trauma, facing addiction head on, and learning to love herself again. In this deep and emotional and unfiltered conversation, Marcy shares the childhood trauma she tried to outrun and how it shaped her addiction. The rock bottom moment that forced her to face the truth, the hardest part of repairing her marriage after addiction, and if you stay until the very end, Marcy's most rewarding moment throughout her healing cycle isn't just about getting sober. It's about how she completely transformed as a mom. So this is real, this is raw, and this is proof that healing is possible. So join me in this episode. To meet with Marcy Hopkins today. Marcy is one of the authors of the book. I've been interviewing quite a few of the women who have written in the Women's Thrive, I think it's volume 4.
Volume 4.
Book, and Marcy has an amazing chapter in this best-selling book. I was also able to be at the launch of this book. And so it was super exciting for me. Marcy, tell me about how launching this book has been for you.
Well, it was so wonderful because there were 15 of us and just all have these incredible stories. And we took this path together of like a year of writing and coming together and meetings every week and just watching our stories evolve and lean on each other and all the emotions that everyone had through it. So for it to all come together, like it was just such a beautiful feeling. And you just feel so connected to all of the other women instead of just like sitting in a chapter and being part of a book. I mean, we'd really formed this bond together and this purpose of helping others through our stories and hoping to inspire and create differences in other people's lives. And then getting together in Miami, how exciting. And we had our book signing and just getting to meet so many of the ladies like you face to face. And yeah, it was just really a beautiful experience.
I could really tell. And being able to culminate it with an in-person event, I bet was so amazing. I could feel it. I could feel that all of you had created a community together of support. That was
Yeah.
amazing. So
Yeah.
your chapter is
Uh-huh.
titled Breaking the Chains,
Yeah.
Creating a Life Worth Living. Would you
Mhm.
mind just giving us a brief summary of your chapter and what you really wanted people to learn from this?
Yeah. So really it's about breaking the chains from my past, the trauma that from my past. And I share a lot about that, about my the sexual abuse in my life, my mother not saving me, my mother being an alcoholic, myself coping with alcohol. So it was really just breaking the chains, those ties that I had to my past that had formed this person that I'd become in my adulthood. And that was a victim, and it was someone full of a lot of pain, a lot of hate, a lot of resentment. And I had to do a lot to change my life. I stopped drinking almost 10 years ago, and I started on my healing journey. And the thing is if we have any addiction of any sort, uh, most times we are masking it's something bigger. And that for me was my childhood trauma. And so I share about the trauma and how I my DUI, which was my last my rock bottom, was the last time I drank, and how that felt for me, how the shame and the guilt and the resentment of myself, right, the hate for myself, um, how I had to let that go. I had to free myself of that. I had to forgive myself. I had to forgive others in my life. And I had to begin to live a life in gratitude and recognize that my past didn't define me, that I was worthy of love, and I was worthy of an incredible life. And that's what I am doing today. I have turned my pain into purpose by helping other people.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Can you take us back to that rock bottom moment
Yeah.
and what you did to pull out of it?
Mm. Well, for me, of course, everybody's story is different, but I had been drinking basically my entire life to cope. I mean, to have a couple glasses of wine a night was very normal, and there's a lot of people out there, and that is very normal. The only thing is that for me, I got in front of the camera in my 40s, and I was going through perimenopause. I was raising my children. My husband worked all the time, so it was like this perfect storm. I was trying to just I couldn't balance it all, and I had brought so much pain from my past into my current life, and that I didn't want my children to feel abandonment. And so it was very hard for me to juggle it all. And because also when I get involved in something, I like to go all in. And so, for instance, when I decided to get in front of the camera, there's a lot you need to learn about that. That's not something that just happens. You don't just get in front of a camera and smile. There are a lot of things that you have to learn to be a commercial actor and also an indie film actor and such. So I was trying to go into New York City. I was about an hour away from the city. So it was like juggle. I mean, you had to be at the beck and call of these agents and such. So with the mayhem of my life at that time, my drinking began to elevate. And I started using wine as liquid courage. And so I knew, because anybody that's doing anything, whether it's eating, drinking, shopping online, you know when it starts to become a problem and it starts to affect your life and you're thinking about it, that this doesn't seem normal. And so I had a year prior to my rock bottom, I had gone to AA because I had a lot of sleepless nights trying to figure out how I could drink normally, whatever that was, whatever that looked like. I'm not even sure what exactly that is, but I guess not needing to drink every night is what I wanted. And I was looking into all these different like modalities like acupuncture and hypnosis, and thinking somehow that that would help me instead of having to quit altogether. Well, I ultimately made the decision to go to AA, and I went for about 3 months. And I don't think at that time that I was fully believing that I had alcohol use disorder. And so I went and I started comparing my stories to everyone else. And this is what we do, right? I was still a good mom. I wasn't getting drunk. I was just drinking. I was still very much involved in the community and my kids' schools, like my relationship with my husband was, but it wasn't bad like what other people were talking about. So I convinced myself that I didn't have a problem. And that next year, my drinking elevated. There's something called a slippery slope. So it's kind of like you start slowly drinking more, and then it's like you like pass over this like imaginary line where now you're drinking and it's really inappropriate, meaning like you're hiding your drinking, you're thinking about your drinking a lot, you can't do anything without drinking. And that's where I got. And so my last day of drinking, I had gone on a modeling gig, and I ended up drinking my liquid courage, which was my wine, because getting in front of the camera was one of the hardest things for me. It brought all of my insecurities up. I was feeling judged all the time. It's a very difficult industry to be in, and especially when you are as fragile as I was. And so that last day I went on a modeling gig, and I drank my liquid courage, and I ended up going out with a girlfriend after, and I got behind the wheel in a blackout. And I got arrested. Actually, the experience, I think God knew that I needed to have a major consequence to change in my life. And so the experience was not bad for me, thankfully. I'm so thankful. And then I had called my girlfriend in hopes that she could come grab me. And somehow I was going to like hide all of this, right? Because, yeah, so my husband wouldn't know. So I wouldn't get in trouble. And then my husband walked up, and he was like yelling, like, how did he find out? And the police had called him because it was local police. And so, yeah, so he took me home. There was silence, and I went to bed, and I was feeling sorry for myself, and I had a lot of resentment towards my husband, like if he were around more, like everything was his fault why I was doing and acting out the way that I was. But I woke up the next morning, and like I just surrendered. Like God stepped in, and I knew that I was like, what are you doing? You're about to lose everything that you've worked so hard to build in your life, to build a beautiful life that that I never thought even possible that I would have. And so I went down to my husband that morning, and I sat down with him, and honestly, I was so afraid that he was going to leave me and take the children. And I told him that I needed help, that I was an alcoholic, and that I was willing to do whatever it took to get sober and be the best person I could be. And that's where it started for me.
How old were your kids?
They were 12 and 8. Mm-hmm.
And you and your husband, are you still together?
Yep. Yeah. We have a wonderful relationship now.
Okay. That
Yeah.
is the silver lining in this is that you can overcome even hitting rock bottom.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about, okay, did you go to treatment? Did you end up doing a treatment?
I didn't need to go to a treatment center. I wasn't
Okay.
drinking that extreme.
So
But
did you go through a withdrawal at all, or
no,
Okay.
because I just wasn't drinking. I mean, there's a lot of women out there that drink a bottle of wine a night, and
yeah,
that's considered a drinking problem. I hate to say it, but it is. Like you
yeah,
are dependent on drinking that, and it's really, it's not a great thing because it affects everything about you. I was there. The only thing is that I started drinking during the day, right? And my husband, because I was drinking that liquid courage, and then I would have a few glasses of wine at night. So there were very few blackouts for me. So I guess I got help before I hit that place where I had too many stories that were going to be really bad, and maybe I would have had to go to rehab. But for me, the 12-step program is what worked for me.
Okay. And then, so the 12-step program was the help you got. And essentially, did you have to learn different coping mechanisms?
Well, that's what it's all about. It's
All right,
about,
so tell me about it. Tell me about
yes,
this. Yeah.
I mean, we really have to, in shifting the way that we think about ourselves, there's so much that we have to do to rewire the way that we think and we react and that we think about ourselves, and our tools that we use when we're triggered, and calming our nervous system and living in gratitude and forgiveness. So there's many. I have a whole program I've put together that incorporates everything that I've learned. And I now live a magical life. I'm able to communicate effectively. I'm able to now have healthy boundaries. I'm able to advocate for myself and use my voice effectively. I move through the fear. I know how to be resilient now. And just look at life through a different lens, because we are so programmed from what happens in our childhood, right? And if it's not your childhood, then maybe it's a really bad relationship that you got in, and they've torn you down, and now you've got to build yourself back up, because our belief system is not real. It's just a belief. It's what we think, and that can be changed. And so, yes, that's what I've had to do, and in changing, coping with everything in life.
What was the hardest truth that you had to face about yourself on this path?
Hmm. Well, I think one of the hardest things to do is to look at yourself and recognize the things that you're doing wrong, because so often we want to blame everyone else, right? So what was hardest for me was looking at myself and realizing that I had a role in so much of what had gone wrong in my life. Not the abuse, not what my mom did, not the sexual abuse, not any physical abuse, none of those things, but in negative relationships and things that happened in work, uh, just things in general, in the way you're parenting, whatever it is, the way that you have relationships with other people, friends, family. So I had to do a real deep dive, and I had to start looking at myself. And when you start, one of the exercises is when you start writing down like the people that have wronged you, and you start realizing those stories. There's something through that. When you write it down, you share it with someone that you really trust. Maybe it's a really good friend. If you're in the 12-step program, maybe it's someone else in the program. Maybe it's a priest. But it's through like sharing that, right? So you take it and you're releasing that outside of yourself, right? And then you sit with yourself. And over time, you will start to recognize, now, who have I wronged? What have I done, right? And what was my role? And so I had to really recognize there were a lot of people that I blamed in my life for the things that were wrong, and my husband included. And I had to go very deep and start to recognize my own my own ways that I was reacting to life, and the ways that I needed to change.
Yeah, my husband, he suffered childhood trauma, and I felt like the shame that he felt and carried, it was very hard for him to, it was just especially hard for him to,
Sure. As a
because
man,
of the shame you feel to admit that, oh my gosh, some of these things, you know, could be my reactions.
yeah. And we we learn as a young person how to cope with that and how to survive that, right? So we take those survival mechanisms into our everyday life, our adulthood. So when we go into any relationship, we still have all that baggage that we're bringing in. And then, so the way that we coped and we survived, we actually bring that into our relationships. And we think that we are protecting ourselves. But the reality is, most times we are pushing away the ones that we really love because we're so afraid of being hurt again.
Those coping mechanisms, they developed for a reason. And so that's, I think, another reason why it's so hard to change,
Yeah.
right? So hard to make it a different response
Change is
because they
hard.
worked for you.
Change is one of the hardest things, right?
Yeah.
They, so many people are worried what they look like on the outside, right? Let's be real. Most people focus, what is it on the outside that I want to change? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So if we have to lose weight, we have to change the way that we eat. We have to change when we eat. We have to change the way we think about food, right? We have to exercise. We have to exercise differently than maybe we were, or we never did it. So we have to start. What works for us and doesn't work for other people, right? So if you think about it that way, that's kind of like what you have to do to exercise and change the way that you're doing everything on the inside and between here. So it's not easy to lose weight. It's not easy to work out all the time. It's not easy to get our physique the way that we want it. But if we keep making small changes every day, if we keep at it, we keep consistent, and we celebrate those little wins for ourselves and recognize the change that we're making and continue to take action, and we will continue to make progress and get to where we want to be.
Perfectly said. So let's talk about your relationship. I mean, can you, and I know you've already talked about it, but how did the alcoholism really play out in the relationship? Banging your head against the wall, trying to navigate the complexities of a relationship impacted by childhood trauma, it doesn't have to be this daunting. When you're married to a partner with unresolved childhood trauma, it can feel like you're walking on eggshells, never quite knowing what will set them off. No matter what you try, it feels like there's always something triggering another emotional response that seems completely out of context. And the harder you try to fix it, the more discouraged you feel. So what's the issue here? Navigating marriage with a trauma survivor is different. The love languages don't work. Date nights don't work. Self-help books don't help. But here's the good news. I've created something that does work. Something built from years of hard-earned lessons and real-life experience. Ready to take the first step toward real change? Let's talk. I'm offering a free one-on-one call where we'll dive into what's going on in your relationship and figure out a way forward together. This isn't just another quick chat. It's a chance to finally be heard, to share what you're going through with someone who truly gets it. No judgment, just real support. So if you're ready to start making sense of it all and find a little more peace in your marriage, book your free call now. Your happiness, your peace, and your relationship are worth it. Let's do it together.
Well, I'd say coming into the relationship, right? I had a different idea of alcohol than my husband, right? So drinking every day and having alcohol in my life every day was very normal. And for him, yes, he drank and he would go out and like he had work things and go out on the weekends and he would do things when he was young. But we came into the relationship, think about it, with two very different ideas about alcohol. So what I did was I would make it kind of a ritual for us. Like, so we both work, right? We come home, we have a glass of wine, I'm cooking dinner. Now we have wine with dinner. So I was normalizing that process for us because that was normal for me. And then on the weekends, we would go to parties or we would go out or we would go to dinner. And again, drinking was normal. But the thing about me was when I drank, I wasn't nice because that's when I was triggered very easily.
Okay.
All my pain would come out. A fight was sure to ensue. And then the way that my husband dealt with it is that he would just shut down. And so that drove me even crazier because like I wanted to be heard. And at one time I thought just yelling was how you were heard. But now I very much know that that is not how we can communicate effectively and get our needs across. But that's how it was at the time. And so just the drinking, it was a back and forth thing. It was just a volley constantly. And then towards the end, it was very obvious that my drinking had elevated, no doubt about that. And he really just kept saying to me that he wanted me to get healthy. Because again, you can't tell someone to get sober. You can't. Because if there were times that he would talk to me about my drinking, and you know what I did? I drank more because I was resentful and angry. You're not going to tell me that. You just don't know how to have fun, right? And he also, he was an executive. So he had this idea. Like I was thinking, oh, he just wants me to be a Stepford wife. So there's all these ideas, right, around this. So it was definitely something that we had to manage for the majority of our relationship. And towards the end, it was something that almost destroyed our relationship.
For those who are loving someone who is battling addiction and trauma, right? And trauma healing, what advice would you give them about offering support without enabling?
Well, there's a few things. The first thing, when you have a conversation with someone, you want to make sure it's the right time. You want to make sure they're not drinking. You want to make sure it's not the next morning when they have a really bad hangover, possibly. And then sit down with them. And don't do it in an accusatory way. Do you know what you did last night to me or to our son? You need to sit down and say, I was really concerned about you last night. That I don't know if you realize this, but maybe you passed out on the couch, or maybe you promised our son that you would take him somewhere and you had drank too much and you weren't able to. And now Johnny's like really hurt. And I just want you to know I really care about you and I want you to be healthy. And I'm here for you in any way that I can be. So you've got to be very gentle in the way that you are approaching this. I would also say there's Al-Anon. There are people out there that can help you to address these things. You can have subtle hints, right? Maybe have books. You can get my book, Chaos to Clarity, and you can relate. I don't know if you know about my book, Chaos to Clarity. But no, get literature and you can have it around, and you don't be forceful about it, but they just might pick it up because believe me, they probably are thinking about it. They probably are thinking about it. Or, maybe there's something where there's somebody speaking on a subject around it. And you just say, hey, I would really love for you to go see the speaker. And you can just, kind of don't make it about alcoholism, but maybe it's touching on the subject. So it's like slowly bringing them into that. Or, there's just ways to subtly address it, but please do it in the most gentle of ways, because it really, really will make someone resentful, and it could backfire on you.
And do you think that knowing that usually especially if there's a trauma history, there's a lot of shame there. And so being aware that those conversations, you don't want to try and exacerbate the shame that they're already feeling.
Mhm. Well, so the thing is that there's many layers to this, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody is drinking to mask trauma, they have to deal with that first. They have to deal with letting the alcohol go and stopping it, because they don't want to feel these feelings, which is why they're masking it with the alcohol. And so it's really important to focus on that a little bit, right? And again, it's not a shame game. I mean, this person has a disease. This is real. And the cancer is a disease. Mental health is a disease. Addiction is a disease, right? So it needs to be addressed. And I would say get educated. Get educated about how you can approach these conversations or help someone. Because if you love someone, and this is something that you really want to help someone with, because they can't help themselves until they can make a choice like me, but it had for me to had to get to a really bad place. And unfortunately for someone that drinks, a lot of times we have to hit that place where we can really believe we need the help. And then once the drinking is put to the side and that healing has started, then the other stuff can be approached. And that healing journey can really begin.
Yeah, I can see that you would need to deal with the alcohol before you could even start to get to that level. Absolutely.
Exactly. And it's a long path. It is, but it's one that is well worth it.
So tell me, how has healing changed the way that you show up in relationships today?
Hmm. Well, I certainly don't need validation from my partner anymore. I certainly don't need to try to be everything to him first. Like, I show up for myself. I show up as the best version of myself today, so I don't have to rely on someone else dictating who I'm going to be, right? And just, again, setting those healthy boundaries, self-care, advocating for myself, living in gratitude, being grateful for the love that I have with my partner, right? So just showing up as being two individuals that are great together and enhancing each other's lives, instead of that person needing to fulfill me all the time, right? It's enough that you got to do it for yourself. But I needed somebody else to always be validating me, always be lifting me up, telling me how great I was because I was so insecure. I don't need that anymore. I have found that within myself and through my spiritual practice and through the work that I have done. And so now I get to be my best self on my own and be the best to my kids and my husband now.
And your true partners.
Yeah.
Instead of one taking quite a bit of the load. And how you feel.
Exactly. So I just feel like we're just good to each other. We just are good to each other now. And listen, we have our bumps in the road, right? And sometimes there may be a little a reaction that's maybe not that pause and then think about what you're going to say. But the good thing is today, like you can get to a point where you're like, oh, 10 minutes later, like, I am so sorry I reacted that way. You know, I should have not said that, or I shouldn't have reacted, instead of that fight that starts. Now somebody said something that hurts the other person. Now the person wants to prove that that person hurt them. Then they want to prove who's right. They're not listening to each other and how that has affected them. They both have different perceptions. And now they're screaming at the top of their lungs. Somebody's left. And what has been, what has come of that? Over probably a sink, a plate in the sink. And it's not even the root of the real reason they're arguing. You know what I mean? So
I do all the downstream, and then it's really easy to focus on all the downstream and never get to the,
exactly,
you said, the root, why it happened in the first place. Yes.
exactly. And it's like, you really, really got to learn to respect one another, understand that you have different perceptions, the way you address things, when you address things, and just really learn to communicate.
What were some of the boundaries that you learned to set that
Well,
you hadn't in
saying
the
yes
past?
to everything, right? So it's just being spread thin and feeling like if you said no to something, that somebody was going to judge you or think you were less than, or, again, saying yes to everything and trying to be perfect is because you're just trying to get praise from somebody else, validation from somebody else. So creating those boundaries is now, like, for instance, if my husband, I'll give you a small example. So I have the things that I have to do on my list, and right, and my husband has his to-do list, okay? And he shares some of the things that I need to do from that to-do list, and I have things that I need him to do from my to-do list. But just because he tells me that he's asked me to do something does not mean that I have that becomes top of my list, right? So I will do it in the way that I prioritize my list. It will get done, but not when you think it should be done. I will get it done when I can get it done. And
You
so
don't
it's
drop everything on your list.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I am very clear with him. Like, have you gotten the dog food yet? No. We still have half a bag of dog food. And I will tell you, I will get to it. I promise you. But just because you ask me to do it doesn't mean that I'm dropping everything and that becomes the first thing I'm going to do. You've asked me to do it. I will do it. You know what I mean? So it's just
I do. That's a perfect example.
yeah,
Yeah. Working together, having different expectations.
exactly. And self-care is a big one for me. Finding time for myself to meditate or take an afternoon rest, or not feel guilty if I want to go get a massage. A massage is healthy for us. Like right now, I have lower back pain. Like, that's something that helps me, right? We sit at a desk a lot. We have this idea of these certain things that are just like these glamorous extra things that we give ourselves for a treat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
frivolous things.
right.
Mm-hmm.
But is it really frivolous? It's good for our health. Do you work out? Do you sit at a desk all the time? It's something that helps you, right? So it's just giving yourself permission. And I'm not saying everything, but there are things within reason that you should be able to give yourself permission to do, especially when it comes to self-care and prioritizing and giving yourself that time. And maybe if it's something you haven't done, it's just maybe making a commitment of doing it 5 minutes a day. Maybe it's just sitting down when you eat instead of running around and standing while you're eating all the time, right? Like that's not really, that is self-care because you're actually caring for yourself to sit down and allow yourself to eat. But I'm just saying 5 minutes to sit and read, 5 minutes to sit and just do a breathing exercise or do a little meditation or listen to music, whatever it may be, if you need to start small. But you don't really need more than 30 minutes a day, but you do need some.
Well, yeah, because if you're in survival mode, if you are burned out,
Yeah.
then that's when you'll look for those other coping mechanisms.
It's so
100%. And
important.
I was less than if I didn't stay on that hamster wheel all the time and have to keep doing it. Push through, push through. If you're tired, push through. And then I couldn't wait till that glass of wine at 5 o'clock because I felt like somehow it was going to like revive me. Right. And it's just, if I give myself a 20-minute afternoon reset, it like changes the whole course of my day.
Oh, perfectly said.
Yeah.
So you've built an incredible platform to
Thank you.
uplift others. How did sharing your own story become a source of healing? Did that help your healing?
Yeah, I mean, listen, was it hard in the beginning? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you're afraid to be judged, your community know, your family know. I mean, my family didn't know about all the abuse, and I know that it's still hard for them to even hear. I don't even think that my aunt hasn't even read the book because she takes on guilt from that for not knowing and not saving me, right? Because she has her own stuff, and that's not her place to save me. But when you start in anything that you do, if you've gotten through something and you've made a decision that you want to create a platform to help other people, you may start small. Start small starts of, parts of your story, and ones that are not uncomfortable to share. But the more and more you get out there and you see that people are responding to that, because people want to connect to you on an authentic level. They see you as human. We're all human. We all go through things, right? And you are giving permission for someone else to be open or share their story or know that they're not alone if you are sharing your story. Now, it took time for me to share more and more, but it absolutely helps to get that outside of yourself and not feel the shame of it. I was raised in a home where you were told, don't tell anyone outside of the home of what is going on, right? So when you do that, we just all stay sick because no one's talking about anything. Nobody's dealing with or processing or understanding and learning how to deal with these things. But today, I freely talk about my story. And if people do judge me, a lot of times it's because I am a mirror to something that they are afraid to look at it for themselves. And I truly believe that. And that far outweighs how many people that I help with my story.
You really did that chapter. You were very vulnerable in telling your story, and I could really feel that. So thank you for doing that. Tell me how you help people now, help others.
So
Because there's many ways that you have. But yeah.
So I have, I had my talk show, Wake Up with Marcy. It was a TV show, but now I have started a podcast, and I've kept with the name, kept with the branding, Wake Up with Marcy. I'm just continuing the conversation in wellness, mental health, women's issues, parenting, all just very important topics that we're all faced with. And just with a podcast, it allows me to go a lot deeper into the conversation. And that's what I do love about this format and this platform. I also have my book that I continue to push out. I have book signings that I'm still involved in with Chaos to Clarity, Seeing the Signs and Breaking the Cycles. And then I'm very excited to be, of course, the collaborative book, and hopefully I'll have more books to come.
One last question. What has been one of the most rewarding moments of your journey so far?
Oh, God.
I know.
I mean, the most rewarding would be my ability to be the mother that I am today. Truly.
You're present. Tell me what that means.
So I am extremely present with my children. I am not reactive to them. I am understanding to them. I show up for them. I allow them to come to me and speak with me without fear, right? I have a very deep understanding and I put myself in their place.
Thank you for being an example of how you can make these changes, and it's never too late, right? I mean, your kids were 12 and what was it? 12 and 8.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's time. There's always time.
there
It's
is.
never too late.
There is. And you know what? If there's pain and trauma that you're just start anywhere that you are, right? And yes, there are people around you that are going to be affected by whatever it is. It doesn't have to be alcoholism. It could be whatever it is that maybe it is your past trauma and you're just a very reactive person in life, right? You play that victim in life, right? And you are affecting other people by being that way. But if you heal and you get better and you see a different way, allow your children to get the healing that they need and the help that they need, not just yourself. Everyone needs to heal.
Marcy, thank you so much. I loved this conversation. Thank you for everything that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Wow, that conversation with Marcy was so powerful. If there's one thing her story proves, it's this, that no matter how far you've fallen, it's never too late to turn things around. You can still become a better partner, a better mom, and a better version of yourself starting right now. So here's the real deal, my 3 biggest takeaways from this conversation. First, hitting rock bottom was the wake-up call that Marcy needed. She didn't just wake up one day and decide to change. She did have to hit rock bottom first. She really did have to face the consequences of her drinking, the guilt, the trauma, and the damage that it was doing to her family. And let's be real, it wasn't easy. Sometimes we just don't change until we have no other choice, but that choice is still ours to make. My second takeaway is that repairing relationships takes work, but it's totally worth it. Marcy's marriage could have fallen apart. Her kids could have carried that same pain that she grew up with, but instead she took responsibility and did the hard work to rebuild trust. And that's the thing, that no relationship heals overnight, but when you start showing up differently, taking small steps again and again, you can prove that change is real. And my third biggest takeaway is that your kids don't need a perfect mom. They just need a present one. This one really hit home for me. Marcy's biggest transformation wasn't just about getting sober. It was about showing up for her kids in a way that she never could before. Marcy's story is living proof that it's never too late to break the cycle, change your story, and build a life and relationship you truly want. If this conversation spoke to you, I want you to share it with someone who needs to hear it, because no matter where you are in your journey, let me remind you, healing is possible, love is possible, and it's never too late to start again. Thanks for joining today, and we'll see you next week.
All right, that's a wrap for today on Love and Trauma, the real deal. Big thanks to my guests for sharing their insights. Couldn't have done it without you. Now, for those of you looking to take this journey further, I've got something special. Head to my website to grab Real Tactics, Real Healing, a survivor's playbook for navigating a relationship with a trauma survivor. It's packed with everything you need to know, do, and say to navigate the emotional minefield, find your balance, and regain your self-worth and happiness.